was that I think there's an interesting subtext for viewers about the position that leaders are taking vis-à-vis the party. Gordon Brown was always seen in many ways as the leader of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Unlike Tony Blair, who was never of the Labour Party, Gordon Brown was their choice. They wanted him. The YouTube announcement about expenses was ridiculed for the way he looked. What people didn't really focus on is that he infuriated his own backbenchers because he was changing the system or proposing a change unilaterally without consultation, and they were livid. He, now speaking out for the need for an independent process, is re-cementing that relationship with the Parliamentary Labour Party. He's essentially saying to them, unlike that man Cameron, I'm not going to force you to go and all write checks. I'm not going to force you to do things you don't want. I'm going to leave it to an outside agency. Now, it may end up with the same consequence for those MPs, maybe no different in the medium term. And I'm not suggesting that's why he's doing it, Andrew. I mean, it may be a little part of his thinking process. Cameron is in a different position. He thinks the country's looking at him, so he took this big risk. Michael Howard says he'll pull it off. I was quite surprised. I stood outside the meeting of Tory MPs, and I expected, I have to say, quite a lot of MPs to sidle up and say, how dare he, and he's forcing me. There were people who are usually pretty critical of Cameron who came up to journalists and said, you know, he's got it right on this. It's not very comfortable, but he's right.
So he's carrying the team with him
so far. So far. There'll be a few conversations at home this weekend,
I'm sure
I have to say,
be.
where wives and the odd husband, because they're still mainly wives, look at the books and say, you're doing what?
No, I'm sure
when
the holiday in the Camargue or Tuscany is not looking too good this year for some. Let me ask you, the Prime Minister keeps on referring to this committee that suggested changes. What is this committee?
Well, the House is run by a thing called the Members' Estimates Committee, and then there's another committee that advises that, called the Committee on Members' Allowances, chaired by Don Tuig. Now, that makes it... It's a cross-party committee, I should emphasise. They are the kind of behind-the-scenes guys who the backbenchers like to sort it out. The reason it's a slightly controversial institution to delegate anything to, it's led by a man called Don Tuig, Labour backbencher, who was Gordon Brown's PPS, his Parliamentary Private Secretary. But the key fact about him is he led a backbench revolt in the Labour Party against changes to the expenses system. Now, to be fair, his committee is today discussing whether to hand it out to an independent body, so he couldn't block it now. So I'm not suggesting he is doing that. But it's a curious group when you look at the group there. These are the leaders of backbench opposition to change, and they're making decisions on change.
This is the